My name is Christopher Kamka, for anyone who doesn't know me. Usually John handles this, but I'm taking it today, giving it a try. So bear with me. I'm not used to hosting, but yeah, it's got a few people sent some pictures over the last month or so, and I've arranged them all in a PowerPoint so we can take a look at them all. Um, looks like the first person in our slideshow is not here yet. Um, hmm. But I can skip around and make that work. Um, looks like the first two people on our show aren't here yet.
Tough on them. Tough on them. They've lost out.
The only problem is I can't explain what their pictures are.
That's
I can give you.
We can
I
guess.
can tell you a sentence.
We can guess.
Sure. All right. Let me get right to the first of them, of which are here. Stu.
Yo.
You are first among the people that are here, so let me put yours up first. And see, it's Babe Ruth's gravesite, which is one that's always been on my list. I haven't had a chance to get there yet. That's also
pretty accessible. This was, I guess, it was the second Hall of Fame grave that I had been to. It was in 1995. Brenda and I been in Hawaii, which I went to because it was my 50th state, and turned out to be also the first of Hall of Fame graves since we went to Alexander Cartwright. Later on that year, I went to the Hall of Fame, and I was going to have some time to kill. And I wasn't at home where there was a nice list in one of the baseball research journals on the locations of Hall of Famers' graves. So I went to the library, they told me, and I got there, and I was taken by all the offerings. And so I had to leave something of my own, but it wasn't like I brought a baseball or anything. So I just went back to the car and got a notepad and I wrote, "Babe, you're the best." I signed it, dated it, put an NY monogram on it. And I'm trying to think of who it was, Bob Bailey or somebody else. And this was a few years later when I was now making a point to visit graves and Hall of Fame graves regularly. And he said, "Did you leave a note at Babe Ruth's grave that said something like, 'You the man'?" And he said, "Yeah, something like that." And he said, "Well, it's in the Babe Ruth Birthplace Museum." And Christopher, if you go to the next slide. So apparently from the museum, they had been out there within a few days. The note looks like it's been rained on a little bit or a little weathered, but not with all the ink running. And don't ask me why they thought that was worth doing, along with the ball that somebody left. But I was on one of my grave hunting trips, so I went to the Birthplace Museum in Baltimore, and this is when it was right there on whatever the street is. It was, they added on to whatever the bar was that this family had, and it was in a nice window display dedicated to his death. And I don't know, I don't think anything's there as far as a museum. That all moved to the Maryland Sports Museum, just outside of Camden Yards. But I was glad I was able to get a photo of it and put the two together.
How far is that away from New York? It's like an hour north, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends on traffic. I was there on a Sunday morning. I just kind of passed through Manhattan, and probably less than that to get up there. Up one of those, the Conic Parkway or something, and Hawthorne, maybe 20 miles. Don't ask me if that's 20 miles north of Midtown or 20 miles north of the tip of Manhattan. But Manhattan's beautiful to be in on a Sunday morning. It's easy to get around. It's a grid pattern, and it's fun just to drive around there when there's no traffic. That was the only one I went to. Billy Martin wasn't dead yet, but he's in the same section on the back side. There's others in there. And then this cemetery does share a fence line with the one that Lou Gehrig is in. And Jake Rupert, Ed Barrow are in Kensico Cemetery. This is Gate of Heaven. And so if you're gonna get there, visit them all. And I think George M. Cohen is in the cemetery with Ruth. So you can knock off a lot pretty easily when you're there.
Yeah, it's always been on my list. Every time I go to New York lately, though, it's for work, and I can't really get away, so I'm stuck with where I'm at. So,
Oh, take another day. Of course, then you got to rent a car out of New York, which is super expensive. But
yeah, it's tempting.
Yeah.
I'll get there eventually. You know what? I put some in here of my own. I think I might as well go next. So I was taking a drive out west, visiting a buddy in Freeport, and I decided to make a few stops. I stopped in Byron, Illinois, and I saw this house. And this house was built in 1845. And it just so happens to be the house that Albert Spalding was born in. There is a marker that marks it, but it's like a block away. I believe it was moved. They put that there. But yeah, Spalding was a local guy. He ended up playing a little bit for Rockford, and he put Rockford's name on the map as far as a baseball town. We're talking late 1860s, 1870. In 1867, he was the pitcher who knocked off the Washington team, who was doing a tour west. It was a big upset. They were looking forward to playing the Chicago team, but then they just decided to play Rockford for warm up, and Rockford beat them. It was a huge upset. Rockford was one of the, dozen or so most notable baseball teams. We're talking like 1870s, so much that they even had a team in the 1871 National Association, and this is where they played, Fairgrounds Park in Rockford. There's been some crazy stuff written about this ballpark, how there was like a ditch around the field. There was trees in the way in play. It was a disaster, but they made it work. Unfortunately, the team didn't play after 1871 because the Chicago fire put it into that. I mean, teams would play Chicago and they'd include Rockford on the road trip, but without a big city of Chicago there to play, nobody was going to go to Rockford. That wasn't happening anymore, and unfortunately, it wasn't going to last anyway. It's not big enough city. You only needed $10 to get a spot in the National Association back then anyway. That's all you needed. Here's a marker at Bayer Stadium, which is more notably where the Rockford Peaches played, that commemorates the 1871 Rockford Forest City Club. A couple of future Chicago National Leaguers are on that team. Anson, most notably. Addy also played shortly there. I think Fisher as well, very briefly. Another notable name, that Ross Barnes was not on this team, but he had played for Rockford a couple years before that. Him and Spalding could have been part of this team, but eventually weren't. They were lured by the money. Boston paid them. Also visited a few graves. Not too far from there are a few guys on this list. Garrett Stiers, who, if you read it, I would recommend read his bio project. It's very it's entertaining. He was a notable power hitter for that team. He's buried in Byron. He's also in Byron. George Bird is buried in nearby Stillman Valley, and Alfred Barker on that list. He played one game for the 1871 team, but he was a notable member of the club before that. He's buried in Rockford. Anson's in the south side of Chicago. Let's see. Fisher. I haven't visited Fisher's grave. Fisher's buried in Hillside, Illinois, which is not that far from Chicago. It's a little west, but I haven't had a chance to get there yet. I've done a lot of studying of the 1871 Rockford teams. You may be able to tell. I did a presentation several years back in front of a crowd of 6 at a SABR meeting in Harwood Heights because there was a blizzard and barely anybody showed up. But there are about 6 people who saw me do a presentation on this team way back. So that's that. Let's see. Bruce, you're here?
Yes.
Let me turn it over to you.
All righty.
Let me pull the first slide of your presentation. Here we go. Take it away, Bruce.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I'm sure everybody on the call remembers, back in June, the Cardinals and the Giants actually held a regulation game in Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama. And my wife and I were fortunate enough to be able to go down there and attend the game. It bills itself as I believe, the oldest professional ballpark in the U.S. It was built in 1910, so it's 114 years old. And it was built by, at the time, the owner of the Birmingham Black Barons of, I think it was the Southern Association, back in 1910. And his name was Rick Woodward. And I think the local newspaper sort of held a contest to help him come up with a name for the ballpark. And, it sort of was a mashing of his 2 names. Rick Woodward turned into Rickwood Field. So he's sort of got a ballpark named after him back then. And again, it was built in 1910. It was the home to both the Birmingham Black Barons and then the Birmingham Barons minor league team through the 20s, 30s, 40s, and I think into the 60s. And but right now it's not really home to any minor league teams. I think the Barons do play at least one game a year there. It's called the Rickwood Classic. They play another minor league team, so it's used at least once a year. I think maybe even some high school teams will get out there and play tournaments and the like that. But the game, the Giants and the Cardinals game back in June was sort of had 2 purposes, I guess. The games was celebrated the 100th anniversary of an official Major League Baseball game played at Rickwood Field back in 1924. It was the Birmingham Black Barons of I think it was the Negro National League at that time. And then sort of the second purpose for the game was to celebrate Willie Mays. And I don't know if you remember at the time, this game was, I think June 20th. And about a week before the game, there was an announcement came out that Willie was not going to be able to attend the game. His health was given him, he wouldn't be able to travel to the ballpark. So that was like a week before the game was scheduled to be played. And then I think like 2 days before the game was to be played, he actually passed away. So it was very unfortunate timing. It was, to be a celebration of Willie Mays, and he missed it by 2 days. But it continued on as a celebration of his life. The pregame ceremonies, his son gave a speech. Barry Bonds, was his godson, he gave a speech. And I believe Willie Mays actually played at Rickwood as a teenager back in 1948 before he went up into the National League. And there were Hall of Famers there. Jeter was there, David Ortiz, Albert Pujols, Alex Rodriguez was there, some other major leaguers. And this was they had a handwritten lineup inside the ballpark, reminiscent of, I guess in the old days, they were written up there on a chalkboard. So we took a picture of that. Next slide, Chris. Yeah, I took a picture of this. I think when this scoreboard was first built, it may not have been in 1910, but it was, the big scoreboard in left center field. And it got me to realize how much information I get from these electronic scoreboards in current ballparks versus the information on this, because everything you want to know about the batter is on these electronic scoreboards now. And I sort of missed that, and I didn't realize how much I missed it till I was at this game and didn't have that information. So next one. Yeah, I just took this. This was looking down the third base line. It was an outbuilding, I guess used for storage, but they had, painted Willie Mays' number 24 up on the one end of the building. And next one. Yeah, outside the ballpark, they had MLB had a fenced in area where concession stands and things like that. And they had these little booths set up for various Negro leaguers who had played at Rickwood Field. And with his death, they had placed flowers around Willie Mays' booth, so sort of turned into a little memorial for him. And I think I have one more. Yeah, while we were in Birmingham, my wife and I were walking around the downtown, and we decided to walk to Legion's Field, which is the current home of the Birmingham Barons, and this is probably 5 or 6 miles away from Rickwood Field. But we came across this building with this mural painted on the side to honor Willie Mays. So we took a picture of that. And there's for those interested, the spring edition of the Baseball Research Journal this year has a nice article on Rickwood Field. And then further on the Hardball Voyager website by the Landmarks Committee, there's an article posted there. I think it's called Accidental Rickwood. And there's many more pictures of the ballpark there if you want to go there and look at things. So that's the presentation.
That's great. Rickwood is. I had a chance to visit there about 2011, and I really didn't know what to expect. And then we were coming up north from Florida. We stopped Birmingham because I wanted to see it, and we parked our car. And they just let us walk in and just, oh yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want, take a look, walk around. And I couldn't believe it, because normally around here we don't get access like that to things like that, especially in the big ballparks. And it blew me away. I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
It's right, like I guess most ballparks were back then, right in the middle of houses and a small little streets. My wife and I ended up, we were with a group that went there, so they bussed us in and dropped us off at the ballpark. I mean, there's no parking around there. Like, again, there's these little houses built up around there. It's really amazing to go down there and see it. So I'm super glad we went down there.
Yeah, I was there, and I think in 2010, and I would recommend. This is an evergreen recommendation. Always have your glove with you. I went with friends. We had our gloves and a ball, and we similarly were just allowed to just kind of wander onto the field and I threw from the mound. It was really kind of a cool, almost religious experience to do it. So
Oh, super.
keep your glove.
Yep.
All right, next up, looks like Jason's here. Jason, you here?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
All right, let me pull your pictures up.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, I got to remember what
Jason,
I
I
sent
didn't
to
mention
everybody.
you were the author of the Rick Wood article on the or on the Voyager thing. I meant to mention your name there. Sorry.
Hey, no worries, no worries. Yeah, first off, I'll just say I got to thank Mark and Chris and John definitely because I wasn't really a landmarks guy or a baseball tourist kind of guy until this committee started. And then I got kind of into it. So now I have a lot of fun going to these places. And I think, just like my Rickwood trip, which kind of was by accident, I don't know that I would have gone to anything I'm about to show you if it weren't for the Landmarks Committee. So okay, it looks like my first one. This is LaGrave Field, and that's in Fort Worth, Texas. I was lucky enough to work about 8 blocks from the stadium for a day, and so I had a chance to walk there. It's completely run down. The field's no longer in use. But what was exciting for me is Dave Hoskins, who broke the color barrier in the Texas League, won his 20th game in 1952 at this field. And the visiting fans, which was unusual, the visiting fans threw Dave Hoskins night that night, not in honor of his 20th win. He won his 20th kind of coincidentally that night. So there's a SABR game story about that, it turns out. So it was really cool to be there. But it was really sad to see that this is a place really rich in history. Again, you could list Jackie Robinson, Duke Snyder, Maury Wills, tons of great players who played here. This thing's going to be bulldozed any minute, pretty much. Nobody's played here in a while, and I didn't have very good access, even just walking around the grounds, not even going inside, trying to take pictures. Private security came and basically told me I had to leave. And I didn't want to cause trouble, but I was like, isn't this like a public sidewalk? And he's like, yeah, why are you taking pictures? And I said to him, so you can use this, I suppose, if you ever need it. I said, oh, I'm on assignment from the SABR Landmarks Committee. That's the Society for American Baseball Research. I'm doing a story on the field. And then he's like, all right, well, I'll let you stay 5 minutes or something, and then you got to leave. So, yeah, so it's not super visitor friendly at the moment. But if you want to get there at all, now's your chance. Okay, I suppose next. Okay, so this one, haha, this is me playing campaigner. So this is, of course, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, and the statue is of Jackie Robinson, but unfortunately, he's playing the wrong sport, so it doesn't qualify as a SABR landmark. Nonetheless, I will always lobby to have it added to the map because I just think what a shame if somebody uses our baseball map to tour Jackie Robinson's Southern Cal and they somehow miss this awesome statue. So, a little bit of trivia. You notice he's not wearing 42. He's not wearing 28, which was his UCLA football number. He's actually wearing 55, which was his Pasadena Junior College number. So, anyways, not a landmark, but I snuck it into the slideshow. All right, what else? Okay, well, apparently I like Jackie Robinson because this is a very cool Jackie Robinson landmark. I was in Montreal for work, and some of you maybe know the Montreal Expos artist, José Tellier. So she took me on a tour of Jackie Robinson's Montreal. This was the house that Jackie and Rachel lived in the year that Jackie played for the Montreal Royals in 1946. At the moment, I would say it's just a middle class, or I would dare say lower middle class dwelling. But you can see to the right of the door what looks like a placard, and sure enough, it is. So it's just like a normal family that lives there, but outside their door, they have a little placard that says essentially this is where Jackie Robinson lived when he played for the Montreal Royals in 1946. I did get closer. I think I have a picture of myself right at their door. But I mean, I'm sure everybody's been there. It's sort of a question of, well, how much do I want to invade somebody's space for my photo op? So, I went up so I could read it and take a picture of the plaque, but it's private property, obviously. Okie doke. Well, that's my tour. I think those are the ones I sent.
Well, I mean,
Yep.
if they put up a plaque, like they got to let you read the plaque, right?
Yeah, and I'll put a link to my Hardball Voyager article. I'm sure everybody here who's visiting landmarks is submitting those articles. I'll put a link to mine because I think I took a close-up picture of the plaque and put it in my article.
Just flash your SABR badge. Pretend like you're an official. That's all.
Exactly.
Just
If
open
only
and
I
close.
had a
Open and close it
1988
quick. Yeah.
score-style baseball card I could show.
Yeah, those are fantastic. I would never thought to look in Montreal for one place that Jackie used to live, but that's really cool. I like that a lot. Next up we have Daniel. Looks like just joined us.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Thanks for sending some pictures.
Definitely.
Here we go. Take it away.
I just got here, so I wasn't really. This was in Kansas City. I think this past spring. And now I just zoomed in on it. But sorry, maybe somebody else can tell what that was, because I just got here and I wasn't ready. But in Kansas City, so one of the things I like to do when I travel is look at the SABR Landmarks map and see what's in different places. So this was one of the things that showed up on SABR Landmarks map in Kansas City. And then what's my next picture? Yep, so went to Cincinnati in the summer, and I always love their different characters, so I had my picture taken with them there at Great American Ballpark. And then
Did you visit the museum when you were there?
not this time because I had been there previously, and I was with some friends there for like kind of one night, so we didn't have a lot of time. But the museum is fantastic. If anyone hasn't had a chance to go and go to Cincinnati, I certainly recommend going to the museum. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll second that. I've been there a while back, and then I went just this past summer, and it's like considerably better even. So they keep adding to it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get there next summer because Braves and Reds are gonna face each other in Bristol, I think. Is it Bristol where they're facing at the NASCAR event?
Bristol,
Yep,
Tennessee.
first
Yeah.
weekend of August.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna try to go there with my brother and then head over to Cincinnati to finish off the series. So hopefully get to the museum next summer with my brother.
All right,
And
got
then-
one more.
One more. Yes. So outside of Louisville, Kentucky, they had on the graves map, because that's the other thing I do besides landmarks, I always look at the graves. So they had, yeah, Pete Browning. I think he was the first player to use, yeah, whom the first Louisville Slugger bat was made for in 1884, I think it says on there. So I went to the Louisville Slugger Museum and then definitely needed to go see his grave in the cemetery
And
in
you
Louisville.
have to pronounce it Louisville.
Oh, okay.
It's Louisville.
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 Louisville. Okay. I have to work on that. But yes, so that was my 3 pictures I sent in.
That's great, and especially since I was organizing those pictures yesterday, and it just so happened the day before I started reading the new book on Browning. There's a new biography on Browning that came out by Tim Newby, the original Louisville Slugger. I apologize. It's a great book so far. It's really, I've always been fascinated by him, and the first 20 or so pages that I've gotten into haven't let me down. Check that one out because there hasn't been much on him at all, and he's very quirky, interesting player for sure. And as he said, the original Louisville Slugger, that was the first He was the first guy they made. It wasn't even a company yet, really. I mean, they weren't even a bat making company. They were just a, I think it was just a lumber company. And hey, make me a bat, and they made it for him, and here we are.
Yeah, I'm gonna check out that book because that'd be cool.
All right, Ben, are you with us? Looks like.
Yeah, you're right here.
All right. We have your pictures right here. Take it away.
Yeah, so give you guys a backstory. I was fortunate about a year ago at this time. I got the email that obviously mentioned SABR offers landmarks for chapters throughout the United States. Long story short, I live in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and before I was born, there used to be a minor league team called the Aberdeen Pheasants. So originally, kind of like the plaque says, they were originally a minor league affiliate of the St. Louis Browns, and then they moved to Baltimore in, I believe, 53 or 54. And if you look at the plaque, a lot of great players played in this small town in the Midwest before they made it to the show. Don Larson, Cal Ripken Sr. Yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on. It's pretty remarkable. And then about a month ago, I did a presentation about the history of the Northern League. So that was the league that the Pheasants played in as well. So yeah, it's a pretty surreal thing that I was fortunate because Peter Kohlbaugh, the president out in Baltimore, he helped me get this come to fruition and everything. And then it was on June 8th this year, 1964, which would have been the 60th anniversary when the Baltimore Orioles played an exhibition game in here in Aberdeen, and the only time ever that a Major League Baseball team has played in the state of South Dakota. I did the revealing of the marker. So this marker, where the ballpark was located at, it's located out of the Barnett Center. So there's a college here in Aberdeen called Northern State University, and it's like a D2 school. So that's where they have like basketball, volleyball, and stuff. So this where the where the landmark's situated would have been down the third baseline. And it's pretty cool too. So then also a local author this summer, he came out with a book on the history of the Aberdeen Pheasants. So you can see photos back from 1946 to 1971 when the Pheasants were in existence, how the ballpark was situated. And it was pretty cool because back then, obviously, it was a lot of, agriculture, rural area. So you have this like giant ballpark that was situated in this neighborhood. And that was when the 50s and 60s, when you had the knot-hole gang era. So we had a lot of kids that, paid 5 cents or however inexpensive it was back then to get knot-hole seats to see the seats as well. So yeah, I mean, obviously anyone, if you guys are located throughout the country or internationally, and instead of having South Dakota known as Mount Rushmore, which is 5-6 hours southwest of Aberdeen, definitely check this out because with the World Series this past year being between the Yankees and Dodgers, it's pretty surreal that Don Larson started here as an 18-year-old kid from San Diego, California, back in 1948. So, and then Chris, if you want to go to the next picture I shared too. So yeah, so then another crazy thing. So it was in like June or July when the news became official on SABR's website announcing that SABR ended up, this marker ended up coming here in Aberdeen. So I got emailed by Marty DeSaltis. So Marty DeSaltis is the grandson of Larry DeSaltis. So in this picture, the gentleman, that's the bald head guy, that's Larry DeSaltis, and he was the Pheasants sports writer who covered the Aberdeen Pheasants during their existence from 1946 to 71. And it was pretty crazy. So he basically messages me and says, thanks a lot for, having this historical marker made, because it was very touching to my dad and everything, because his dad was like a runner for the team. So he did all the odd jobs for the Pheasants. So he like caught fly balls, basically a gopher. So he did all the oddball jobs. So this photo that I'm sharing right now is pretty cool. So this is a photo from the ballpark in 1964. So the picture of the bald-headed guy, that's Larry DeSaltis, who was the Pheasants sports writer. And the guy right to the left of him is Cal Ripken Sr., which is pretty crazy. So this is like, 20, 25 years later before he's in Baltimore and he becomes the or not the Pheasants, the Orioles manager too. And then another crazy tidbit: if you compare Cal Ripken Sr.'s managerial record, his best ever season was in 1964 when he went 80-37 when he managed the Pheasants that year. And I believe either 8 or 9 players ended up making it to the show. Jim Palmer played on that team, Dave Leonard, Eddie Watt as well. So it's yeah, it's pretty crazy that he has his dad had this photo. So it's very like out of body experience, because you think, you know, like that's literally how it was, you know, compared to 2024, which we're in now. So yeah, so like I said, anybody that hasn't been to South Dakota, you want to find a lot of rich history, check out the monument here in Aberdeen.
What was the process like, Ben, to get the sign permission to put it up? And did you have a hand in writing what's on the sign? How did that go?
Yeah, so kind of give you a backstory. So I obviously, you know, it's very cliche, very field of dreams. So when the weather gets kind of bad here in Borean, I yearn for the summertime. So I stumbled across SABR back in about 2022, and then I came across the SABR chapter. And then so back then, obviously, South Dakota were so small, and then I joined the Baltimore chapter because of the connection of the Pheasants and the Baltimore area. So then about a year in, literally about this time a year ago, I got that national email campaign where it mentioned, you know, SABR Landmarks Committee. So I'm reading this email, and then I had that light bulb moment thinking, wow, you know, historical markers, you know, basically pitch your idea of why you should have a historical marker. So then when I saw this marker, I reached out to Peter Coolbaugh, and I said, hey, Peter, my name's Ben. I live here in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Way back in 1971 was the last time that the Pheasants were a minor league affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles. So then from there, I ended up talking to this local guy named Pat Gallagher here in Aberdeen, and he knew the president of Northern State University, where the ballpark was located at. And he basically said, you know, hey, can you give permission to put it on your the campus, or have the historical marker on your campus? Like, yeah, absolutely, because obviously it's good for the university because it's good for recruitment. It's good for people to visit their campus, and obviously that's a good chance for them to have more students enroll at their university. So that was kind of the big hurdle. And he told me that about December, so about a year ago at this time. And then from there, I reached out to David Stinson. So he's like the VP of the Baltimore chapter. And then I kind of told him the same thing. I had this idea / vision, and he kind of helped me construct it and everything. So I had my own little thing of what I wanted to talk about. And then I submitted the application, I believe, in like the middle of January. And it's a pretty simple process, you know, basically say, why do you think it's historical or why it's significant? And I just kind of spoke from the heart because, you know, think of all the great ball players that have that American dream or just world dream of wanting to make it to the show, and they start in some small town. So I knew about the Pheasants when I was a kid, and as like an 8-year-old, I was so shocked that, you know, Cal Ripken Sr. managed here and Cal Ripken Jr. was the team's bat boy. Don Larson played here. You know, Lou Piniella played for the Pheasants. Just all these great players where they just didn't have a short cup of coffee. They had a very long historical journey as well. Oh yeah, and then the other thing I forgot to mention too, so relevant towards Terry Francona. So Terry Francona's dad Tito played for the Pheasants in 1953, and he ended up meeting Roberta Jackson here in Aberdeen. And then Terry Francona was born here in, I think, April 20th, something, 1959. So I was hoping before Terry unretired and now he's the manager again for the Reds, for him to actually come back to Aberdeen, because then he can see the historical marker now that says, you know, Tito Francona, his dad's name and stuff. So I'm hoping now, you know, once he retires for good, after he wins a World Series with the Reds would be great, and then he can come back and check out Aberdeen and the historical marker and stuff. So yeah, that's how I kind of came up with the whole concept, and I was able to get the historical marker. So I'm happy too, because it's the first one in the state of South Dakota, so that's always going to be memorable as well too.
Thanks, Ben. That was great.
Yeah, thanks.
I think my favorite thing about where I really got into this landmarks committee, and John did a presentation years back, and I saw that and it really sparked something. I said, you know, I'm into this too. you know, we get sent certain places. We end up having to go certain places, and we want something baseball related each place we go, and there has to be an excuse baseball wise to go somewhere. This is the best part of this whole project. Just being able to say, "This is where I'm going. There's a baseball something for me here," and I love it. That is all of the presentations I received. I want to put it out there. Are there any upcoming trips for anybody? Is there anything on the schedule?
Not upcoming, Chris. I didn't know if I was going to join this or not, but I went to the North Carolina Baseball Hall of Fame in Wilson, North Carolina. If it's cost me $5 to get in. Lots of baseball. So they say they got something from everyone who has played in the majors who was born in North Carolina. A lot of baseball cards, a lot of high school team pictures, stuff like that. So if you get a chance, it's worth going there to see. Like I said, I have pictures. I didn't know if I was going to join, or otherwise I would have sent them to you.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah.
I have a question and comment for Ben. Wow, I was really impressed with all that, and I was happy to hear that Northern State. It sounds like you didn't have a lot of hassle with them. Here in Minnesota, Brent Peterson of the Washington County Historical Society is trying to get a marker up in Stillwater, where the 1884 Stillwater team played with Bud Fowler on it, and its school board owns it, and he's not getting anywhere. And I'm trying to get a marker up for the downtown ballpark in St. Paul called the Pillbox, first decade of the 20th century. The white St. Paul Saints played there, and there's a lot of significance with the St. Paul Colored Gophers meeting the Chicago Leland Giants for what they called the World's Colored Championship. It's state property. It's where I work, actually, and I gotta suck it up and go rattle some cages again tomorrow. But at least here, that's a public school. I'm familiar with Northern State, but they were pretty much gung ho to go with it. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, I can't remember what I was on. I was on I went to some SABR video conference, and there's a gentleman out in New York, and he was trying to get an old marker where the polo grounds, and he was kind of in the same situation where there was a lot of politics that were in the way. I think really for me it was just beneficial because when you're in a small town, there's not as many layers to have to go through because Aberdeen's like maybe like 30,000 people. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Stu. I mean, I'm kind of with you, and I'm a historical person, and I love baseball because that's why all of us are here. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's clear. I don't really know because I mean, I'd say just be persistent because I'm in sales, so it's cliche where you got to be persuasive and you just have to have that confidence and provide that value of why it's beneficial and stuff. And that's what I kind of did when I talked to people. I said why it's beneficial. Like even if you're not a baseball fan or not, just the historical significance, that's a big drawing card for people to come to Aberdeen or come to Stillwater, Minnesota, as well. So I would just try to say the value of how it's great for tourism for the area and stuff too. So that's just kind of the pitch I would say when it comes to trying to get a historical market there.
Well, thanks for doing that. If I ever am in the vicinity of Aberdeen, I'll give you a call because I'd love to visit that. And I think you might even be by default in our chapter. And if it ever works for you to come and do a presentation on what you did, let me know and we'll try to work it out.
Yeah, so I actually I used to live down in the Twin Cities, so I went to a lot of Saints games before they became affiliated with the Minnesota Twins. So yeah, I mean their ballpark's really cool, and then the whole historical significance before the Twins came to the Twin Cities, how obviously they were the affiliate of the Brooklyn Dodgers, the St. Paul Saints were, and then also the Minneapolis Millers. So Willie Mays played for him, and then Ted Williams played for him. And I believe Orlando Cepeda played for him too. So it's pretty cool because I know at CHS Field they have that cool historical little museum there down the left field line. So it's cool how they kind of have the trolleys because back in the 50s and 60s, you know, they had scheduled split double headers, so you could obviously go to a Saints game and then take the trolley and then go to a Millers game or vice versa. So I thought that was cool when I was there in the Twin Cities and they had that at the museum there.
That's just prompted me to think that maybe I should go get well, I have a picture of where Willie Mays lived. It would have been all of 2 weeks when he played with the Millers. And I might try to track down Ray Dandridge, who lived, I think, across the street from Mays, maybe 8 to 10 blocks away from Nicollet Park. But after seeing what Jason had there with Jackie Robinson's home in Montreal, maybe I'll try to dig a little more into some of the residences here.
Yeah, and then the other thing I forgot to mention, Stu, because if you ever do make it to Aberdeen, I think it's only like 5 or 6 hours from the Twin Cities. The areas where Don Larson stayed at, as well as Tito Francona, the house is still around. And then also when Marty DeSaltis reached out to me, he gave me the address that his grandpa lived at, and he told me that what's his name, Earl Weaver, stopped by and talked to his grandpa all the time about, you know, the ballpark and then also situations throughout the game. So that's pretty cool too. And then also the house that Cal Ripken Sr. lived at. The neighborhood, I at least know the neighborhood that he lived at and stuff too. So if you want to get a cool tour sometime, just look up my contact information on the SABR, my SABR profile, and then just get a hold of me and we can go from there.
Or maybe we'll make a chapter road trip out of it.
Yeah. Cool.
Any more questions?
Does it look like people have their hands raised, Chris?
Does that mean they have questions? Sorry,
Yes.
I'm kind of new. All right. Mark.
So I guess I have a sort of an FYI. I've been working on this project, which it's possible could provide some raw material for this committee. I'm calling it the Satchel Paige Project, and basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to answer the question, where was Satchel Paige on every day of his life? And I have spent a bit of time on this myself, and I've been asking for volunteers, and it's going to be in the Negro Leagues Committee newsletter, which is coming out next week, which I'm hoping will get some people interested. But it's essentially going through, like newspapers.com and determining where Satchel Paige was when he was doing all his barnstorming throughout his career, both during seasons where he was pitching for famous major league teams, and also after in the off season, and then after his career was over. I just looked. He was in. I have one South Dakota date, which was in 1959. He was in Yankton. I don't even know where that is, but you probably do. Um, he was appearing in a game with the Satchel Paige All-Stars, one of his barnstorming things. So would have been 53 then. So still a youngster, still had many more years to go of pitching. But anyway, my point is that I'm hoping that someday I will live long enough to see plaques all over the upper Midwest for all of the places where Satchel Paige pitched. That's where he spent a lot of his time, was in, as you probably all know, the Dakotas and Montana and all throughout the Great Lakes region and everything. That's where a lot of his barnstorming happened. So anyway, so hopefully there'll be some news coming about that.
Donna.
Unmute. Hi. So a couple of things. First, I'm sorry, I didn't submit any pictures, but I can put them up as my background and close my camera if anybody wants to see them, but we can table that for the moment. The other thing that I wanted to do is to let people know that if you have interest in visiting Hinchliffe Stadium, be sure to reach out to me. I'd love to meet up with anybody who's going to go there. And if you want a reason to visit that isn't baseball game related, breaking news, February 8th is going to be SABR Day at the Youth Museum of Hinchliffe Stadium, sponsored by the Elysian Fields chapter of SABR. And we just locked up our panel participants today. We're going to be doing a screening of Pride Against Prejudice, the Larry Doby story, followed by a panel moderated by Dave Kaplan, journalist, author, former director of the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center. And the three panelists are going to be Joe Moore, who wrote Larry Doby's biography, Luke Eplin, who wrote Our Team, and legendary journalist Claire Smith. So if anybody has a desire to come on out February 8th, the event's going to start at noon and will end when we end. The movie's going to start at 1. And the museum is attached to Hinchliffe, so you'll be able to see the ballpark. You actually walk through the ballpark from the parking structure. So if anybody's interested, come on out. Want more information, shoot me an email. My information's in the SABR directory.
Matthew.
Wow, I feel like I've been set up really nicely. Now, Donna didn't show any photos, but I'm willing to show a few if it's possible for me also to share.
Of course.
Wonderful. Let me push the button. We'll see what happens. Oh, sharing's turned on. Okay, so one sharing is on, so I think this one has to stop and then I can share.
Here, let me turn it off. Does that work?
Pushing the button and maybe you have to explicitly allow me to share.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
And Donna, I also have not forgotten you said you wanted to show some photos that time allows.
It's okay if time allows, no problem.
Great. Let's see how these go here. Hey, everyone will recognize this one. I also was in Louisville not too long ago, and honestly, I'm going to go back because there is so many great things in this particular cemetery. You can see Ali, you can see Colonel Sanders, you can see Browning. I went looking for a player named Jimmy Armstead, and the place that they sent me to is the marker for his wife, which does mention him. Nowhere nearby appears to be him. It's not like they were put side by side, so that's a search that's going to continue from my side. That he was someone who played for a few years as a pro, and then moved on to many other things in his life, like a lot of pros do. But I think it'll be a worthwhile thing to return and nail down if he does have a stone there in the same cemetery. Here where I am in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we're blessed with a number of Hall of Famers in one of the local cemeteries. This is the Clarkson family plot, which includes Dad Clarkson and a few others. So they are grouped well together, not too tough to track down. They are across the street from the big famous cemetery. So if you've been around here before and you've been to Mount Auburn Cemetery, it has more of the literary figures. If you go across the street to Cambridge Cemetery, that's where you can find some of the sports figures. There's Tim Keefe, another Hall of Famer. Again, not too hard to find. They make a point of calling out several of the famous names, and some of them are even on Google Maps if you go looking for them. This is a gentleman I've spent some time researching, William Clarence Matthews. He was almost the Jackie Robinson before Jackie Robinson. He started as an African-American on Harvard University's team. And he was really considered probably the best player on Harvard's team circa 1905, 1906, 7 in there. Harvard, in fact, made some very specific choices about where they did and didn't go because, of course, there was a lot of places where a team with an African-American player would not be accepted. So if you get the chance, look up either essays or now there's a book by one of a New England professor about William Clarence Matthews, that he is buried in the same area, not too far away from the two markers that I mentioned previously. And I think he deserves a bigger call out, I will submit this as a landmark location, honestly, because it ties into so many other things that are important to the area. And when I was out at the National this year, that gave me a chance to go to the League Park in Cleveland. Really, it's a phenomenal facility, honestly. It's a reason on its own to go to that neighborhood and look around. You've got the history that's there. You've got all the players who played there. During the process of rehabbing the park, they uncovered the staircase that used to lead from the clubhouse out onto the field. So part of the reason they painted it the way they do is you're looking at everybody who played there, whether it was major league players, Negro League players, anybody else who played on that field would have walked those stairs to get out to take their positions to go out and hit. There's a museum attached to it, lots of great displays there, a whole range of material, both in historical and I would say thematic, really well arranged. I want to go back because I think I remember that Louis Tiant Sr. has some handmade bats that are on display there that I neglect to take a photo of. But given Tiant's passing and the question about whether he'll actually be chosen to be a Hall of Famer Tiant Jr., I want to go back and see more about Tiant Sr. too. This is more from League Park. They have a combination of the original wall that, although it's no longer part of the structure that's significant to the field, there is a lot of places that they call out things that have happened in the past, as well as players who are significant to the area. Hinchcliffe. Donna, I flew through Hinchcliffe on an incredibly hot weekend earlier this year. I did notice that in addition to me going through there, the Capitals had to suffer through probably close to 100-degree heat for their weekend series. More power to them. I can only imagine how quickly they ran back to the air conditioning of their bus once the game was over.
And the conditions on the field there, that turf throws off heat like you wouldn't believe. So it's not a fun place to play in the heat at all.
Mm-hmm. And just up the highway from there, up the turnpike, I found this Larry Doby recognition. This is really the best picture you can take, because if you pull back any further, you're just at a roadside gas station. And I'm glad that they put it up and they gave it such a nice display that's visible from the roadway. So if you chose to see it and stop by, it'd be easy enough to do. Donna, do you have more to say about this series here that recognizes the New Jersey Hall of Fame members?
That particular photo that you've got up right there is at the rest stop. It's around, Dan, what is it, exit 150 on the north side of the Garden State Parkway?
Yeah, it's right around there.
Pretend I speak Jersey and say yes.
No, it is. It's not far from where I live.
Yeah. And Dan actually did a pit stop there not long ago because we were wondering if there might be opportunity to get some Larry Doby history inside of that building, like the Vince Lombardi rest area, from what I've been told, has a lot of historical stuff inside to kind of tell about the person after whom the rest stop is named. But we'll look into it. But the reason somebody had asked me why in this seemingly random spot there's a rest stop named for Larry Doby. It's the closest rest stop to Montclair, which is where he lived in his later years. He was, originally in South Carolina, then went to Patterson, and eventually became really good friends with the Berras and settled in the same town as them in Montclair. So that's why it ended up where it is.
Terrific. While I was in Princeton, I also stopped by President Cleveland's grave. I mean, heck with that president guy. Baby Ruth is more important. If you're steeped in the lore of some of the more esoteric parts of Babe Ruth's career, I'll see if I can explain this in short words, and then if Jason, if you want to embellish, please do. You had a company, the Curtis Candy Company. They had an existing candy bar. They adapted the name of the candy bar to reflect the popularity of Babe Ruth as a baseball player, and then they pretended retroactively that it was named after Ruth Cleveland, who'd been dead for years prior to them even coming up with the possibility of doing this. not long afterward, Babe Ruth endorsed and released his own candy that had a varying amount of things connected to it. And Curtis Candy successfully blocked him from selling his own Ruth candy bar because it would be competitively confusing for customers familiar with the Baby Ruth bar. So I don't know exactly what to say about where people's heads were at a century ago. They're just as they could be just as conniving and confounding today as they were then.
So Curtis Candy said they named it after her because she was the first baby born in the White House. So even though she had passed, they were honoring the first baby born in the White House.
I mean, who am I to say? There's such a full range of stories attached to that. But hot or not, I knew I had to stop by and take a photo once I found out that she was also buried there with President Cleveland's family.
Matthew, the only thing I'll add is that the Ferrara Candy Company was hoping to come out with the $10 million bar, and then 10 million of the Northwest League playing out at Tacoma blocked it. So they were forced to call it the $100,000 bar. And that's totally made up.
I was going to give you as long as you wanted to run with that one.
That's as plausible as the Curtis Company's claim. So
it's just missing a lawyer. Yep. And this one is not far from President Cleveland, same cemetery. Thank the Lord it had a shade tree there for me. But here you go. Here's the other Boston, the other baseball grave that's there in the same cemetery. So if you do pop into Cleveland, I'd say, Princeton, make sure to see both of these. Specifically, if you need shade, this is the better one to choose. Aaron Burr in the same area, all kinds of Princeton connections. These are the ones that are most baseball adjacent. There you go. There's a better look at the location there in the graveyard. This is really close to my neighborhood. They once a year do what they called an old time baseball game. Lots of historical uniforms on the players. They'll always bring out a couple of former Red Sox veterans to join. But this is just to walk up and watch the game in the neighborhood on a neighborhood field kind of setup. This is fairly early in the game, but they do a great job, like All-Star style, of cycling through absolutely everybody who shows up in a uniform who can play. They'll get on the field. This year, Papelbon was there, and he was sort of the big name in the face, and he's just as big and tall and intimidating as he ever was. Here's two classic uniforms. The gentleman on the left is gonna create certain emotions in people here, because that is in fact Jeff Mayer. He has grown up. He is now doing all the things that a grown-up does. But part of it was coming out to honor one of the former sports writers who used to play in this game by wearing his Seattle Pilots uniform in the game. And every time he went out to the field, people definitely let Jeff Mayer know they knew who he was, and was he actually going to catch a ball legitimately this time. This, when I was overseas, I noted is an invented Negro League team that showed up on an Adidas sweatshirt in the 80s. And I have no idea why it was for sale in Italy. But if I wanted to drop 180 euro that day, I could have come back with that recognition of a fake team that never existed that Adidas created for marketing purposes. They also over there had a Hideo Nomo Dodgers satin jacket that was embroidered. If this had been my size, it would have come home, but there was no way I was fitting on my body. So this one's more for Jason's benefit. And this last one, if there were a similar landmark set within the hobby of card collecting itself, you can be sure Charles Buck Barker would be on it. And I was fortunate this year when I was in Cleveland to obtain this for pretty small money. But you flip it over and you see that you've got someone who is a foundational figure in the hobby on your hands. There's no way I'm going to part with this myself.
So Matthew, what's in the donut data folder? Are you going to share that with us too?
I can. I spent about 10 years working at the consumer radio company Sonos, and I took on, I did a lot of team building around the company. And every Thursday I would go take a big box of donuts around with a survey written on it. And then I'd find out what everybody thought about question of the day or something that was relevant to it. I couldn't tell you if there's a baseball one in it, but let's see if I can find. Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's one that is, I should be able to come up with one here that is relevant to our current season. And let me share again. And that will be, how far will you travel for Turkey Day this year? And this is one of my favorites because not only did you have the original scale going from 0, passing by all these different distances from the Boston area, including reaching the Proclaimers, which we've decided that 1,000 miles is one Proclaimer because, of course, you'd walk 500 miles and then 500 miles more. Then the one person said, well, actually, I'm going to go to Australia. So they had to write all the way on the other side of the donut box in order to recognize how far they're going to go for Thanksgiving.
Well done, Matthew. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I gotta get the screen back.
We still have Jason.
Jason. Okay. I lost that hands up. Jason, what do you got?
Okay, so I do have a question, and I put up a background. Don't confuse me for a Yankee fan. This would be like if General Sherman got his picture taken in Atlanta, right? So yeah, that was me in New York. But yeah, I was going to ask seriously. I remember maybe a couple years ago at SABR 51 in Chicago, there was a process for voting in an ineligible landmark onto the baseball map. And I am very interested in the Jackie Robinson statue making it. Is there a process anymore for ineligible landmarks to make it onto the map?
Yes, we are bringing that back this year, and the intention is to have something in the Hardball Voyager probably in sometime in December to re-announce that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I would also just add that and I know that maybe it doesn't matter except for these rare cases like Jackie Robinson and Babe Ruth or something, but it seems to me that anything involving a very iconic baseball player is baseball related. I mean, because if they really have to be depicted playing baseball, then I would say that Jackie Robinson's birthplace isn't baseball related because he wasn't playing baseball when he was born. So I would, when it comes time to whatever we decide to do, I hope that people would just sort of think like most of the things, frankly, on the landmarks map, many of which I visited, are not as interesting to most people as the Jackie Robinson statue at the Rose Bowl. That's just me.
I fully agree. Especially with iconic figures like that. It's a no-brainer.
I concur.
We just put an asterisk by it, like the Dodgers' last World Championship.
There you go. Okay, that's perfect. A perfect full circle moment.
We wear our asterisks with pride, you know.
Wait, their last one was 2024. What are you talking about?
The last one before this one is what I meant
Oh.
to say, to be
Okay.
more
Okay.
clear. Yes.
And
It does ruin the joke, which I also used from 1981 to 1987, by the way.
What was that? The joke? What was the joke?
The Dodgers asterisk World Series.
I feel like the
He-
Cubs
81,
last
yeah.
one in 2016 was 100% legit, but the one before that, was it like 108 years before that? I got to think about it a little bit.
It was
Yeah.
legit. 07 and 08 were legit, man.
Hey, John McGraw was aware of that July 1908 letter to the editor of the Tribune about not touching second base. He was well aware, and he also would have been aware of the Gill incident in Pittsburgh on September 4th. So,
Okay, Ed, tell me about that, because when I was researching that, I wondered if McGraw, this happened in Pittsburgh, if he would have been aware and think he would have tipped off his team, but you're saying there was a letter to the editor that McGraw would have definitely been aware of Doc Gill not touching second?
In July of 1908, someone wrote in a letter to the Tribune asking, can a winning run score on a force out to end the inning? And the Tribune said, nope, cannot happen. John McGraw was made aware of that by Mr. Chance and others. He also was aware of the Warren Gill incident in Pittsburgh.
I'm going to send you a message.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a message, Ed. I'd like to love to hear more about that. Yeah, that's very interesting.
All right. Looks like we have no more hands up.
Actually, I do have a hand up. I just
okay.
couldn't figure out how to put the hand up, but I just wanted to, just want to introduce myself. My name is Mike Richard, and I live on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. We feel that Cape Cod is has the greatest summertime college baseball league in the country. We have 10 teams, all playing within about a 30-mile radius down here. For the last 5 years, I've been the historian of the Cape League. And last season alone, we had over 400 former major league or current major leaguers that played at least one season here on Cape Cod. Rookie of the Year winner Paul Skeens played for the Wareham team. AL MVP Aaron Judge played for Brewster. Cy Young Award winner Chris Sales for Yarmouth Dennis and so forth on down the line. We just had our Hall of Fame induction last weekend, and highlighting it was Todd Helton, who obviously went into Cooperstown last year. Nick Senzel, another major leaguer, Pat Neshek, among them. So I just wanted to kind of put it out there. I don't know how many people ever get out here to Massachusetts or to Cape Cod, but I would love to take people around to see some of the ballparks that we have here, and to see where some of these great players played. A few of these parks also have markers. In Chatham, there's a marker for where Thurman Munson played during the 1967 season. I believe there's another in Katuitt. They have a marker up for all of the former major leaguers that played there as well. So it's an interesting locale, an interesting place, and I just kind of wanted to put it out there for anyone that has the opportunity to come out to Cape Cod to see what we're all about here, and just to see the history that's been here, because it really is it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, so I'm well aware of the Cape Cod League. It's definitely like a plethora of talent, like you just said it yourself, because it's like any future Hall of Famer plays in the COD and everything. So like all the big schools in the SEC, like if you're legit superstar player, you play in the Cape Cod League. So yeah, it's definitely on my bucket list. I want to go out there sometime because, like you said, you see, first round talent, but it has the whole small town vibe to it and feel. Because don't they basically just stay with local families that live on the Cape Cod League out there?
That's correct. Yeah. Families put up every town has probably 30 or 40 families that put up not only the players, but the interns that work here. We had about 3 years ago, Harry Carey's great grandsons called games for the Katuitt baseball team. Chris Carey is now a play-by-play man for the former Oakland Athletics. So we've, in addition to baseball players, we have a lot of other baseball notables that came through the Cape League during their times as well.
Yeah, and it kind of correlating. So I did my presentation about the Aberdeen Pheasants. So they played in the Northern League, and there's a summer college league here in the Midwest called the Northwoods League. So the Northwoods League, I'd say it's probably second when it comes to MLB talented players. So I think about 360 or 70 players have made it to the show. So one of them, Pete Alonso, he played for the Madison Mallards in Madison, Wisconsin. And then a year later, he played out in the Cape Cod League. I don't remember the player's name, but a lot of the players, if they're like a freshman or sophomore or a senior in high school, they usually play in the Northwoods League. And you already know 4 or 5 years. If you can already play there because it's wood bat league compared to, you know, aluminum bats in college. So that's going to differentiate if you're a real hitter or not. And then, you know, that's basically like the next tier, because then if you can rake it in the Northwoods League, and then you can obviously get up to the Cape Cod League, and then if you can really perform that summer, then there's probably a really great chance you're going to make it to the majors. So.
Absolutely.
Well,
Pete Alonso
what
did play here in 2012, and I'm sorry, it was 20. I think it was 27. Anyway, he didn't hit a single home run all season here, and now look what he's doing in the major leagues. But that was his first year with wooden bat here.
When did the Cape Cod League start?
Well, 1923 was when it first organized as a league. So last year we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Cape Cod League as it was, you know, called a league. Baseball on Cape Cod goes back to the 1860s, actually, but 1923 was the year that they kind of give credit as when it started.
Because when did the South Dakota League, the summer league start? I mean, I know there was even a fall league. I know a couple of members of the 45 Cubs. As soon as the season ended, they went and played in Huron, South Dakota for the
So the all that I know for my historical, there was obviously the Northwoods, or the Northern League. That was what the Aberdeen Pheasants were in, and that was like from in the 1930s to the 1970s. For a college league, though, there's a league called the Basin League. So the Basin League lasted, I think, in like the 50s, 60s, or 70s. So that was basically, you can look at old clippings from like the Sporting News, and then a lot of people were based, and I think some clubs back then, they basically owned certain teams. So for instance, like Jim Palmer in 1962 or 63, he lived in like Scottsdale, Arizona, I think. He basically was told, hey, play in the Basin League. So he played in Winter, South Dakota for the Winter Pheasants, which is like South Central South Dakota, which is basically middle of nowhere. And it's like, I think 3 or 4 hours from Aberdeen here. So then the Basin League, and then there was an Orioles scout that saw him playing there. And then they said, we should sign this guy. So then after 1962, he reported to the Pheasants here in Aberdeen in 1964. So I only know about leagues in the summer. I don't know any like fall leagues here in South Dakota, though.
Yeah, if I might ask you, Mike, have you looked at the map to make sure, because we have the Cape Cod League ballparks on there. I know we've got the Thurman Munson marker on there.
Okay, good.
Have you happened to look to make sure that the markers are on there separate from the ballparks? Or if you have, would you mind? Because we'd love to make sure we've got it all.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Mike. That's really interesting. I'll take you up on that offer if I ever get out there.
Yeah.
That's a league. I've heard plenty about that league, and I know plenty of great players have come through it.
Actually, six Cooperstown Hall of Famers. Todd Helton, the most recent, but actually back in 1919, before the league was even organized, Pie Traynor played one season for Falmouth down here. So Pie Traynor, Carlton Fisk, Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio, and now Todd Helton.
I want to see Frank Thomas too.
I'm sorry? Yeah, Frank Thomas. Yeah, that's 6. And we've got our fingers crossed that Billy Wagner gets in this year because he's a former Cape Leaguer as well, and he'd make it 7 for us.
That's great. All right. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up? Looks like no. All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. It was some great places. Gives me a few more ideas of places I'd like to go as well. Yeah, definitely. We'll have to do another one of these, hopefully before the season starts. Plenty of time to get out there and check out some more places. I know I've got some ideas. So with that said, good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks a lot. This was awesome.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you, Donna.